I pulled this session together because in my experience with using Copilot, there's just so much out there and so many little hidden gems that can really impact how you operate in a Copilot world. Just really quickly, a little bit about me. I'm head of tech training at Grant Thornton, Australia. My entire adult career has been working in adult education and tech enablement, and I lead the AI adoption programs at Grant Thornton, Australia. And truly, I'm driven by making people's lives a little easier. And being a mum of two, any efficiency and productivity gains that I can find, I just love to share. Just to set the scene on what to expect in this session. We're going to cover a lot of ground, and some of these tips you might already know, but I'm really confident you're going to learn something new. Keep an open mind and experimental mindset, because some of the features you might think, oh, that's not something I would use, but really consider, is it something you could use? Could this really change how you operate? None of what I'm showing you today is advice, just knowledge sharing from my experiences. We're going to have a look at Copilot Chat, Copilot in Teams, Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Forms, and OneNote. So quite a lot, but everything that I am going to show you, anybody can use. It's all really simple stuff. If you walk away with at least 5 new Copilot tips, I'll take that as a win. I'm hoping it'll be actually a lot more than that, but that's what I'm aiming for. And everything that I show you is accurate as of today, which is the 3rd of December, where I am in Sydney, Australia. As we know, the tech is evolving quite rapidly, so there may be some updates in the next few days. We are going to start with Copilot Chat. I think Copilot Chat is one of the most powerful tools that I have ever used, and this is something that I actually use many times a day. But there are a few little hidden settings and functions that you can use to really enhance that experience. So the first one that I've been using is temporary chat. So when you go up to the little blue button in the top right corner to create a new chat, from the little drop down, you can create a temporary chat. This will not save to your conversations. This will just be like a little short-term conversation. Maybe if you needed to quickly ask, like, what's the traffic like, or something like that. Something that doesn't need to be stored in your conversation history. The next thing I wanted to show you is in the top right hand corner, the 3 dots, we've got a drop down there that there's a few different options that you can set. Now I'm in the work tab at the moment, so there's a few other options, but this is where we can look at our recent pages. If we've been using Copilot pages, you can see your history of scheduled prompts. We can see the settings and also in web search. So for the work tab, you can toggle the web search on and off if you want it to just stay within your work data or if you want it to do a combination of both. And depending on what you're using it for, it can be really helpful to toggle that on or off. When you click on settings, under personalization, you can actually create some custom instructions. So if you're somebody who's been prompting saying like, I'm head of tech training at an accounting firm in Australia, my tone is professional but friendly in all of your prompts, you can actually set this up under custom instructions so that you don't need to actually repeat that each and every time. So just custom instructions, make your updates, and then they will be applied to each of the prompts that you use. But just keep that in mind that it does apply to each of your prompts going forward. Copilot memory, you can also teach Copilot about you. So if you're actually working within Copilot itself and you've got a really great prompt and a really great conversation going, just tell Copilot to remember this about you, and that will be stored in your Copilot memory. So that was just from the ... settings personalization, and you can set these up. Now from that ... I showed you the scheduled prompts. So this is where we can see some of the previous scheduled prompts that I had set up. And it's super easy to set them up as well. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment, but we are just going through the settings as of right now. Now this is another one I wanted to show you that I have found super helpful. So this is, I'd done a web prompt and I just asked for the latest headlines in Australia. And if you scroll down to the bottom of your prompt, you can see a few different options here. And you've probably used a lot of these before, especially like the copy and the share. But you can also add this to a recent page, which will populate that into a loop page. But I find also really helpful is on the little ... you can also see read aloud and open in Word. So if you have done some really great research or got some really great content, being able to read aloud, helpful if you're on the go or maybe you just want to listen while you're doing something else. But opening in Word just makes that content really easy to leverage and use as well. In the little bottom right corner, you can see this little star icon. And if you click on this, this will actually take you to your prompt gallery. So in your prompt gallery, you can see suggested prompts. So I always find this really helpful to point people to because Microsoft has a really great library. And even if you don't use it exactly, it can give you some really great ideas on what you can prompt with. And under your prompts, that's where you'll see any prompts that you have actually saved to your gallery. I'm going to switch over to my live Copilot chat for a moment. And I'll just share my screen in a second. Okay, so just to quickly show you, if I pop in a prompt, what is in my calendar for tomorrow as an example? What I wanted to show you once this actually finishes running, but a very busy day. But when you hover over your original prompt at the top, this is where you can see a few of those other options. So, edit your prompt, copy it, but this is where you can schedule your prompt and save it. Now, I'd already saved this prompt before, but by saving this prompt, this is actually going to add it to that prompt gallery I showed you earlier. And hovering over it, schedule this prompt. I could make this run every day, for example, if I wanted to. Probably not on Saturdays or Sundays. And save. And you'll see that adding into your scheduled prompts. This is really helpful. At the moment, it's only working in the work tab, not the web tab, but really helpful for you to, get on top of, I guess, your emails, your calendars, any of your work content. So that's everything that I wanted to show you. Oh, actually, there's one other thing in Copilot that I want to show you, sorry. So a lot of the examples that I'm going to go through are Sydney Olympic related from 2000. So I've just got up this website about the Sydney Olympics, which is awesome. But when you are in the Edge browser, you can click on the little Copilot button up here. And this is something I remember when Bing Chat Enterprise was first released, that this was one of my favorite ways of using Copilot, or Bing Chat as it was at the time. And there was a bit of challenges using it as time goes on. But if you open it, click on the web tab, I can actually ask it to summarize the main points on this page. Oh, there's just a delay in my own machine. Hold on a moment. Summarize the main points on this page, and what this will do is actually look at the content of the website that you're at and give you a summary. So helpful for like lengthy news articles or long amounts of content that you can then get a summary here as well. All right, the next one I'm going to jump to is a few functionalities in Teams. So we all use Teams a lot, and again, there's a few really lovely, simple, but effective features that you can use in Teams. So I'm going to show you again, I did a couple of screenshots and videos just because of the way that I didn't want to risk some of the live demos. But one thing I wanted to show you was when you're in a live Teams call, what you'll see up the top of the Teams window is a Copilot button. When you click on that, especially if the call is being recorded or transcribed, you can then use that chat feature on the side to ask questions about the live call. So, I've recapped the meeting so far. I missed the first 10 minutes. Or what did Jemma just say? I missed that last point. Or what's an interesting question I can ask about Copilot? So being able to really, I guess, cover and interrogate the content while you're there, or if you've had to duck out for 5 minutes. So that's really helpful. And sometimes it's not super easy to see that that's there. Another little icon I wanted to show you, and this is one of my favorite ones, if you are typing a lot when you are working with your colleagues. So I've got a little example here that should be playing on the screen. So I'm typing a message to a colleague, and I'm finding as I get older, my typing and spelling is getting progressively worse. But for an internal chat, I don't want to spend too long having to review it and update it constantly. So what you can do is when you're typing, you'll see this little pen with a star icon. which can do a little rewrite for you. You can actually ask it to be concise, longer, casual, professional, or just do the simple rewrite, which is what I use all the time, especially if it's just some, basic spelling that I want to clean up. Great, and replace. This is one I showed internally, and quite a lot of people are like, oh, excellent, that's going to be a real time saver. Now, I just showed you the two different icons that you can use when working with Copilot. And one thing I wanted to highlight was before I go into some more content, is I have noticed while I'm using Copilot that there are loads of different icons, different ways that I guess Copilot is displayed in the different applications. So sometimes it says Copilot, which is amazing, super easy. Sometimes it's like a transparent icon. Sometimes it's a little star icon. Sometimes it's a pen icon. Sometimes it says summarize. Sometimes it's the colorful Copilot. I'm sure there's a reason in the background as to why they're slightly different. But when I mentioned before about having a experimental mindset, how I've been learning a lot of these Copilot tools is just by when I see these buttons, clicking it and giving it a go and seeing if that's helpful or not. So you'll see today, that's honestly how I've learned a lot of the tips that I want to show you today. So just keep an eye out. And even just then in Teams, you saw one example I showed you was the Copilot icon and one was that little pen icon. So yeah, whenever you see these pop up in the tools, just click on it. Sometimes Microsoft releases stuff without actually telling us or communicating it, or sometimes I wake up in the morning and open my machine and there's new functionality. So yeah, clicking on any of these icons is where you can learn a lot of those. Now, another one in Teams that I have found really helpful is if there's been a call that you've missed, so maybe it was a recorded team meeting, a training session, and I don't have a lot of time to quickly watch the entire meeting, you can do an audio recap of that meeting. And that's where Copilot will generate kind of like almost a podcast style recap of the meeting. This has been really helpful for me if perhaps maybe I'm on my way to pick up the kids and I want to get the gist of a meeting that I missed. And when I get the audio recap, then I sort of know what happened in that meeting. I'll probably still review the real meeting later on, but at least I can consume the main points of that. So all you do is you go to the meeting, go to audio recap. You can put a few parameters, so you can ask to catch up on meetings from the last 7 days. You can have it in different styles, and then you hit generate. And what you'll see then is you can also listen on mobile. So this is what I've been using it for. Listen on mobile, pop my earphones in. So when I go pick up the kids or, and maybe I'm commuting into the office or whatever it might be, I can catch up that way. And the other one that I have found really helpful is if I'm in a chat with somebody, because I've got a lot of internal chats going at the same time, quite a lot, especially over several months or even several years. When you're in a chat with a person, you can see the little Copilot icon in the top right-hand corner, and I can ask for a summary of my conversations that I've had with Daniel, or I can ask, when did we talk about Salesforce, or when did we discuss XYZ? So you can really interrogate your previous history with that person, and especially if you're trying to find specific communications. I know sometimes I can remember, oh, we were definitely talking about the Christmas markets in the same conversation. Find me that, and it'll, take you right to there, which is really helpful. Now, the other tool, which this will really depend on, I guess, the nature of your role and who you operate with, if this is helpful. But we've been doing a lot of testing on the interpreter tool within Teams, and it's been pretty good so far. And it's quite straightforward to set up. So when you are in a live call, from the little ... you can go to language and speech and then turn on interpreter for me. Now, we did a test internally of this, and for full disclosure, we mostly work within Australia, so we don't have a huge need for a large variety of languages. But I did test this with a few different language speakers, and we tested French, Spanish, and Mandarin, and myself English on the call. And it worked pretty seamlessly turning it on. I'm sure this is only going to grow and improve. What we did find on the call was in one-to-one conversations, or if you were just talking and presenting, it worked really great. It changed my tone a little bit. The feedback I got from the audience was that the language that they were listening to me in wasn't as friendly as what my normal vernacular is. So definitely test that, but it's a really helpful one and a real quick win. So definitely get on board with that. But like I said, test it just so you can understand what the user experience is. Because when we were testing it, there was a couple of seconds lag, which makes sense. So just getting, comfortable with how that operates. I'm going to jump over to Copilot in Outlook. I'm going to use the new Outlook, and I'm not going to go through every single feature, but like I said, there's a couple of little gems in there that I think you'll find really beneficial. So I'm just going to share my screen and pop open. So one of the items that I find really helpful here is that summary by Copilot, and you probably all know this one, but it's just too good not to show in terms of being able to understand and catch up on a long thread, especially if you've been like CC'd in an email thread going back and forth. So that one is pretty straightforward. But what is really helpful here is, let's say I have got this email thread and I decide I actually need to connect with this person. You can click up here on Schedule with Copilot. And what this will do is actually go through, create an invitation, and it will attach the people who are in that email thread and identify, or do its best to identify, a time where everyone's available. And what it will also do is create an agenda. So what it's put in here is a general summary of the email thread there as well. So that's really helpful. One I discovered recently too was adding a room with Copilot. So I can click this, and again, this will depend on the setup that you have in your office. But what this is doing now is actually adding a room automatically, finding one that's available. It's Copilot Managed too. So that's another one that I definitely recommend getting on board with. Another one in Outlook that I wanted to show you, which this is a little bit different in the new Outlook, is from the Copilot drop down here. You've got the option to chat, reply, summarize, and Outlook Classic has those features too. But what we also have here is settings. And what you can do in settings is, in the draft instructions, adjust this to actually have your context. So similar to how in Copilot Chat, I showed you the personalization that can make the responses suit you there. You can then do this here as well. So I put here, don't use emojis, be concise, be professional, don't add fluff into my messages, be friendly, not over the top, don't be cheesy or verbose, just speak normally based on my sent items, and save. So now when you use Copilot to draft emails, it's going to take into account these custom instructions. So definitely recommend doing that, and think about again what your communication style is. I've seen some people where I work do things like, don't always agree with me, challenge me, make sure it's always accurate, make sure it's referring to only the top tier resources in Australia, etc. So that one is Word, Outlook. I'm going to jump over to Word now. So this is one that I prepared earlier, and this is where we can see the content here. But when I was discussing earlier about finding those little pen icons, this is where you can see it pop up in Word as well. So I can highlight here and click on the little Copilot button, and this is where you can do your auto rewrite, your structure and refine, make it shorter, visualize it as a table. I find the visualizing it as a table really helpful. Because that is something that can be quite time consuming. So I'm going to convert this paragraph to a table, and it might not be great, but at least you then have the choice of, oh yeah, that worked, no, it didn't work. And this could be more consumable to your end reader. So that is something that is really helpful. Another one that I found really good when using Copilot in Word is really being able to, I guess, ask it questions to be a critical viewer. I mean, you can always do like your summarize this or where is this, some of those standard ones. But maybe I want to say I am going to present this document to our senior executive team, or maybe a group of graduates, or maybe a group of clients, whatever it might be. What questions or concerns may they have on this document? And this is something I do a lot in Word and PowerPoint as well, where I ask it to actually give me some feedback on the document and really putting in that persona, because you can imagine if I was presenting this to a group of CFOs versus a group of graduates versus a group of clients, they're going to have different questions and different perspectives. And you don't have to take all of these questions in, all of these feedback items, but it does give you, I guess, something else to think about and to take under consideration. Now, I did prepare as well a little video because there's something else that I found really great in Word. So I'm just going to grab this now. And this is using agents within Word. And you can use it within PowerPoint and use it within Excel too. But where this can be super, super helpful, I found is because you have got access to Copilot chat within the document, and I'll play this video and keep talking. I've just got a recording of that Sydney Olympic content, and I actually used the researcher agent to do this research for me. So I've said, tell me all about the Sydney Olympics. And what is really great about using this here is I've seen a lot of people use this for research analysts. If you've created your own custom agents within your organization, you can actually work alongside with Copilot in your document to conduct your research. And what you will see in a moment is after I have completed this prompt, just jump ahead, it is now conducting the research. And what you can see is it's starting to fill out some of that research. And I use Researcher in Copilot chat all the time. Super helpful to, pull out insights. But the difference that it can actually start doing in Word itself is once it does give you all of the responses and, the information, if this is something that will actually be really helpful for me going forward, when you get to the very, very bottom, there is a little plus icon to move it directly into your document. For me, this has been a game changer. And again, I know I've demoed just using the researcher agent, but again, if you've got your own custom agents that you've been using internally, it can be really, really beneficial to be able to actually work alongside it. And then once you're happy with the response that you've got, just move it over instead of copying and pasting. Now, I have another little hot tip that I want to share with you, and this is something I made up and it may change, but I feel like when I'm working with Copilot, I can kind of group its functionality into 3 different operations. So one is it to create, one is to update, one is to interrogate. So by creating a new document, creating a new PowerPoint, creating a new email. So really generating that initial content, which is awesome. So like that researcher content, that was my creation. Then it can update. So how I was showing you to highlight the content and then turn it into a table or turn it into bullet points. You can use it to update. You can use it to review, to change things up. And then interrogate. And that was the example where I showed you where I was asking it, I'm presenting this to the board. What do you think that they'll think about it? I'm sure there's more ways to group it, but for me, when I've been educating people on how to use Copilot, when we group it this way, being able to create content, update content, interrogate content, it seems to really resonate with our people, which is all that I want really is to, like I said, help people understand and leverage the content themselves. All right, we're going to move over to Copilot. So this is where I find that Copilot shines in PowerPoint. I know that early on, how Copilot would operate wouldn't always be exactly, wouldn't always like work with our templates and maybe wouldn't give us everything that we needed. But what I have found is it has greatly improved. So we can create that content, we can interrogate, we can update. So this is just one of the slides that I actually got from Microsoft, but what I find this really helpful because again, we get sort of anecdotal feedback where people have said, I can't work out how to best use it in PowerPoint, but asking questions about your presentations. That same scenario I showed you in Word to say, I'm presenting this to a group of graduates, what questions might they have? Can you help me generate speaker notes that will, be a good segue from slide A to slide B, and to generate those relevant images, which is really helpful. I'm going to go into PowerPoint and show you a few of these ways that I've been leveraging it. Okay, so going over into PowerPoint, I'll just bring this over. You can see this little star icon again, and this is where we can create a presentation. You can see the other functionality here though as well. New presentation with file, add a slide. And I'm sure we've all used similar examples of this. And what I'm going to do is just go straight to my Olympic file that I was creating earlier. We go Word Demo Olympics, create an engaging presentation for a group of graduates who were not born when the Sydney 2000 Olympics were. So this should hopefully be interesting content. I was still in primary or elementary school when the Sydney Olympics was on, so I always find this helpful. Now, what you'll notice is because I am in a Microsoft template, creating this is actually going to align with the Microsoft template. If I was in my own work template, this will actually then create the slides and align with our templates. Now, I can't guarantee, of course, that it will work perfectly with your organization's templates and slides because everybody operates a little bit differently, and I guess it depends on how they've set it up. And it's still not perfect. I mean, I find I still have to make little tweaks, but this is all about giving me that head start, that springboard into creating my presentations so that I don't have to do everything from scratch. Now, while this is still running, I did want to show you, here we go. So what you can see before I go into the main view, there's lots of different templates that it started leveraging, or lots of different slide layouts, I should say, and they've grouped it with the heading or the divider slides, and they're starting to mix it up a little bit. And you can also see the pictures that it's selecting are relevant to the content. Now I'm just going to move into the normal view. I just go down here to access that. That's not a Copilot thing, that's just a me thing. So Sydney 2000 Olympics, here's some key highlights, and it started breaking it up. And what we've also got too is some great speaker notes. Really helpful, I find, to again leverage to give you a head start on what you could say to each of these slides. The content's again not going to be perfect, but what you can see as well is when you have your text boxes, you can see the little pen icon appears. And again, this is where I think some of the really fantastic functionality comes out. Auto rewrite it, condense it, make it professional. Maybe I'll make it a list. This to me is really great, especially when we've kind of copied and pasted maybe from other slide contents, or some people have come in and maybe done a brain dump on their slides. Just click here, play around with it, auto rewrite. You can actually tell it more specifically what you want it to do. But yeah, the condense and make it a list is really great. A little bonus tip for you, this is not actually Copilot related, but if you do have your text in list, what you can see is up here in paragraph, there's a little convert to smart art button. So you can, make things visualized a little bit differently if you want. And this again is just a way to kind of work with your content and make it not just text on the screen. So again, that's once your text is in a list, then you can click on it and convert it to a smart art icon. Now, the other thing is we want to have a new slide with Copilot. So I don't want to create a whole brand new presentation. If I go new slide with Copilot, add a slide about Kathy Freeman's gold medal. You could reference a title, a file if you wanted to. But I'm just popping this in. Kathy Freeman won the gold medal in the 400-meter run, and it was a very exciting moment in Australia. Great, it's giving me a slide. Again, you can see it's giving me some speaker notes. The design suggestions come up so I can again play around with what these designs look like too. So this is what, again, I mean by the experimental mindset, and also sort of having the realistic expectations. It's probably not perfect, but it gives me that starting point with the content so I can then build on that further. Now, if I launch Copilot on the side, again, this is where I think you'll get the real benefits of you can leverage the agents if you want to talk to agents, or like use Designer to create an image that reflects the content there. And then you can add that directly into the slide, really putting in that persona to get the feedback on the content, to get the feedback on the flow. I find that really good, especially to get an idea of, does this content order make sense? Should I move this around a little bit? All right, that's PowerPoint. I'm going to jump over now into Excel. So just give me a moment. I have a couple of slides that I want to talk to about it. So Copilot in Excel, I feel like, is getting more and more powerful. Now, I don't want to go through, I guess, all of the fundamentals of Copilot when I do my demo in Excel. It is certainly one I encourage you to start playing around with, because as I mentioned, it is getting easier and easier to use. And with Word and PowerPoint, it similarly has that Copilot box on the side. And this is where you can, ask your questions about, like, summarize the content that we've got here and create me a pivot table, and when did Joe Blogs do XYZ. So that can be really helpful. But what I want to in particular show you is a couple of the features that I find exceptional. And some of them I stumbled across, and some of them I did quite a bit of research on. Now, this is just some dummy data that I created, but what I wanted to point your eye to is the clean data with Copilot. Now, the reason why I find this really helpful is I think sometimes our brains are almost trained to ignore those yellow bars that come up at the top, but this clean data with Copilot, it's so good. If I go to show suggestions, what will come up here is down the side. It's telling me, do you have extra spaces? Do you want to remove them? Oh, yes. And it's basically going to go through and clean up my content. So maybe there's inconsistent capitalization, or somebody has said BC here and BC City here. Someone's got Terry in lowercase or uppercase. So really helpful. Sometimes that yellow bar doesn't pop up though. So if it doesn't pop up and you know that your data needs updating, it's just in the data tab. And what you'll see in data is this clean data option. And this will bring up the same one. So honestly, for me, this has been glorious. Now I'm just going to go back here and have a look when we are actually in one of these formula columns. Can you see again, the little icon appears, which to me indicates there's some kind of Copilot functionality here. And there's a lot that we can do. We can get deeper analysis. We can suggest a formula column, conditional formatting, teach me about Excel. I really like explain this formula, because sometimes we have a formula that works, it's all good, but I don't actually understand how it was created. It's called I don't know what this function means. I don't know what all of these references mean. And what this will actually do now is go through and try to explain how this formula is working to me. Okay, this formula checks if the value in the email column is not a valid email address. So the formula function, if the value matches the regular expression, etc., etc. Basically what this is doing is it's looking in the email column, and if there's no @ sign or no dot, it's saying true, that there's an error. So I know that we need further investigation. Now I'm going to click continue with app skills, and this will just launch the Copilot box, which you could have also, of course, launched from up here. Now, Copilot in Excel is a little bit different to Word and PowerPoint, because if you click here, you've got the normal chat and the app skills. And app skills is where you're going to get a little bit more specific, access to using Excel and Copilot together. Now, what I've got is a couple of prompts that I wanted to do. So I'm just going to grab one. So let's say, for example, now I know how to remove duplicates, but let's pretend I don't know how to. I know there's some duplicates in my data. I've got a prompt here. Guide me to remove duplicates based on order ID and duplicate flag. So this is where previously, before Copilot, some of these things are, well, I mean, I would have, but if you didn't know how to do, it would be, you'd have to get someone else to do it. You'd watch YouTube videos, you'd be reading guides, but they're not contextual to your content. Whereas actually asking here, you can get the answers to your questions that's relevant to the content that you're working in at that moment. So here it's telling me exactly what I need to do, which is great. Now I'm just going to say stop generating because there's one other item that I wanted to show you while I was here. So it's giving me a formula. Lovely. Excellent. Now let's say what I want to do is actually have highlighted in red anything that the order priority is high. So I'm going to say make cells red where the order priority is high. Now, I've also done things here like just ask really specific questions that I might have previously had to do a VLOOKUP for. So how many dresses sold in NT? Or list the emails of the purchases of clothing or whatever it might be. And it's really great at actually just pulling that content out. So I wanted it to highlight all of my cells red where the order priority was high, and that is doing that for me. And again, I know this is conditional formatting, but if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of time to kind of set those things up, this will just be a lot quicker to view and work with those. I highly recommend too looking at what the suggested prompts are that comes up. Suggest a formula column, summarize using pivot tables, give unique insights, highlight all cells with XYZ. They'll generally push out here really helpful tips. All right, we're getting closer to the end. I know this has been a lot. I'm going to jump over to forms now because if you ever need to create a survey or a quiz, you're going to find a lot of benefits to using Copilot in forms. So create a form to capture where our team wants to go for an end of year lunch. I need to understand best timings, dietary requirements, and if partners are coming. Now, while this is generating, if you have a bit more time to spend on this, I often go to Copilot chat and say, I need to create a survey or form that does XYZ, really think about what you want to capture in that data. Give me a prompt I can put in forms, and then I come over here and we'll put that in, which is really great. You can see here that you can ask Copilot to review your form. You can actually click here and even get Copilot to rewrite your questions. So again, whenever you're seeing those icons pop up, use it. It's really helpful. And the very last tool that I'm going to show you today is in OneNote. So this is a pretend Project Crocodile that I set up. Now you of course have got the Copilot up here where you can ask questions about your content. But there's a few other particular tips that I found helpful. If you're someone who likes to take notes during calls or during meetings, in addition to asking specific questions, or you can again use your agents to help bring research across if you're using it for that way. But again, you can see the little Copilot button popping up. So when I click here, I can get to summarize this page. I can get it to rewrite the page. I've done rewrite page when I've attended conferences and just taken loads of notes, and it's kind of all over the place, and I get it to rewrite it and it just makes it a little bit cleaner. But something that's pretty helpful is if I highlight this text and click on Copilot and create a task list. Oh, something went wrong. That's okay. I'll try again. Let's just try this one. Oh, anyway, normally what would happen is you get a checkbox at the top that has a task list based on your content. So again, another really helpful tool to use. So I know again that I've covered a lot in this session. I really hope you have found 5 different use cases that you can start leveraging. But just to bring it to the end, I think the biggest piece of advice that I'd really love you all to take away from this is looking for those little icons, the Copilot icon, little pen icon, the stars, because if you can have that experimental mindset to just click and have a go, you will uncover even more hidden gems and find really great use cases that are relevant to you. I hope that was helpful. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to share other things that I learn along the way. Thanks, Femke.
Thank you so much, Jemma. It was wonderful, and I have learned a lot as well. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, I enjoyed everything that you said, and I think you did a wonderful demo and a wonderful wrapping up about all the things that you learned from the past. I think 24 months working with Copilot. So thank you so much for that, and see you next time. And of course, reach out to Jemma if you have some questions on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.